Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Communication and Digital Enterprises podcast. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about AI technologies and their usage in the home. For myself, most of my interaction with this type of technology is on my iPhone or my Google Home, but a lot of the time I catch my devices responding to me without me even initiating the Hey Siri or Hey Google. They also seem to have a lot of information about specific things that I didn't necessarily tell them, but has found quite useful. Sometimes this is super eerie though, and I can't help but wonder, are the devices listening to us, or how are they learning all of this? It makes my life easier, but still curious. I remember when growing up, the technology we have today was just a dream of science fiction that we saw in films like Back to the Future and were dreamed up on shows like Star Trek. Additionally, there was a time in my childhood when we didn't have high-speed internet, but just dial-up and other seemingly primitive or today's standards of technology. So it's just really interesting to see where things have changed and how far we've come on this journey. As we all have different experiences with and different types of technology, it'll be especially interesting as today we'll be connecting as a group and talking about how AI is utilized in the home and our personal experiences with it.
I just attended a conference where Shoshana Zuboff was touching on issues that AI brings to everyday life through privacy settings. She said that personalization, control, exploitation, fear, and democracy are just some of the terms that she really structured her theory of surveillance capitalism around. She emphasizes the notion that tech giants like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and other large corporations are capitalizing on their personal experiences while invading our privacy. As such, surveillance capitalism can be defined as the monetization of data captured through monitoring people's actions and behaviors in the online and physical world. There's an immense inequality between what we know and knowing what is known about us. Zuboff pointed out that Facebook's operations are stating that AI ingests trillions of data points every day and is only able to produce 6 million predictions of human behavior per second, creating a new source of social inequality. If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be concerned. But if you have nothing to hide, you are nothing. I found it interesting how Google Nest has built-in microphones to that pick up conversation and dialogue in the house, which to me is absurd and pretty crazy, but I guess that's the only way that they know how to get better, if they know what concerns consumers have. All in all, though, I feel like AI really knows how to find loopholes in privacy and knows how to, and big tech companies are figuring out ways that make people aware to the point that it's not too frightening. But once you start to think about what they're doing to really dissect us as consumers and figure out what we like and what we don't like is pretty concerning.
The convenience of these technologies in simple forms, such as through maps on our devices, often is what outweighs our want for privacy. In our society, there's a lot of good things that can come out of AI technology to help those who have, say, a disability, health conditions, or age restrictions that can essentially help make their individual lives easier. However, we can't really take this positive look too lightly or for comfort, because at the end of the day, the information you're giving up is just a matter of who owns the technology and what their personal motivation is behind using it.
That's a good point, Serena. This really reminds me of when Professor Turkin was talking about privacy paradox and how the risks outweigh the benefits, and yet people still do it. And this is really prominent in our everyday tasks, but people still don't know about all the risks. And I was fascinated to hear when he was saying that Google is always listening to everything that we say. And the consequence of this is that when we are talking to somebody on the phone or through a smartphone device, a laptop, Google is listening. And then the next day, Facebook, some ad on Facebook can pop up, or on Instagram, about the things that we were discussing. And it takes a complete hold on all of our privacy in our lives. And yet we will still, be using our phones and our computers and Facebook and Instagram, even though all of this is going on. So maybe we are just desensitized to everything that's going on.
That reminds me of the convenience that Professor Turkin brought up. With the improvement of AI, the privacy and security issues are also at risk. While consumers are aware of these issues, these devices are still gaining popularity. And while the benefits that AI provides are high, there are a lot of downsides to security and privacy that are usually overshadowed by the pros that these devices offer.
Yeah, and that was like another point with the specialization and how with all the convenience, people are losing the knowledge for skills. And I think that this is really relevant with our generation today and the future generations that are to come, because as things get more convenient, we are required to do less, and that can change us as a species in the future. In the long run, we will not be the same that we are now, and we just want to make sure that the future that we are heading to will be the most beneficial for us as a civilization and a population. We wouldn't want to risk, losing the skills. Like, the more skills that we have, the smarter we are. And the question is, how good is it really to make everything so convenient? Like, I think we need to look at both sides of this.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about, especially when you think in the grand scheme of like the bigger picture. I think we should definitely take away a lot of like pros and cons from the situation and just try and think about and be more mindful about how we move forward with our uses of AI in the home and like on our devices and in general.
With that being said, we wanted to introduce someone that we feel could provide a great point of view on this conversation.
We have a special guest speaker today that joined the Ted Rogers School of Information Technology Management in 2006. He is currently the Associate Dean Research at the school, and main scholarly research interests are in human-computer interaction, in Web 2.0, data analytics for decision support systems, and in his words, intersection of how we process, organize, and present information and how it influences people's decisions. He was involved in some of the early research to define information overload and examines how content is leveraged. Because of this, our correspondent Leslie went and interviewed him to ask some of our preliminary questions and just general things we wanted more knowledge on and just sort of what direction this could go in. And he offered us some interesting insights on it all.
So my name is Oscar Tretken. I'm a professor here in IT management. I'm also the Associate Dean for Research currently for the Ted Rogers School of Management.
The start of the interview takes place where our guest is basically talking about his personal opinions about smart homes and what he uses in his everyday life.
Yeah, and I'm an enthusiast. I'm not sure for better or worse, but
Okay.
I try to make things around me smarter if possible. We have two Google Minis and another Sonos speaker that can kind of now act as a third Google device, and all the phones are Google. It's funny when there's a commercial and the Raptors players are talking about Google Home, and anytime we watch that commercial, on the commercial they say, "Hey Google," and our Mini and my phone, everybody starts listening to who's talking, right? It gets a bit confusing too, these poor devices. I don't use an alarm anymore. I just talk to the phone and wake me up at whenever.
Really?
That's how I go, yeah. These phones are with you everywhere, right? So, and they can do so many things that there's a huge consolidation effect. So all these smart devices are through your phones, right? My light bulbs, my alarm. Thermostat, no. It could be, but it's not. The Ring. So there's a lot of convenience that comes with it. One caveat is that if you lose your phone, or even if you lose its charge and what have you, you can really be very inconvenienced. Sometimes we don't even, for example, if I don't know, my kids are still asleep and I leave, I set my alarm when I'm gone, so that in the house there's still alarm set as if nobody's left.
Right.
Whereas when you're in there, obviously it will detect the motion. So, I mean, it's a lot of convenience and improvements, life quality improvements that these things provide. There's also a bunch of downside. Security being one of them,
there's
and
all
privacy.
the security and privacy issues, and we're really kind of interested in that, but I'm more interested, I think, even in like why everybody knows that those are issues, but these devices are still gaining in popularity. Like, why?
That's
why
actually
is
something
that?
we are kind of looking into.
Yeah.
There's this concept of a privacy paradox. So if people know that there's a risk that they're taking, they would normally, like economic theory tells us that people would take a risk if the benefits outweigh the risks. So you calculate the risk and say, I'm going to still do this because overall my next expectation is positive, right? But so that's either because the benefits are very high or the risk is minimal, right? Or somewhere in between. The difference is always has to be positive, or at least neutral, right? But in this field, there is this thing called privacy paradox, where the risks outweigh the benefits, and people still do things. And why is it so? One, all things technical, people aren't quite aware of what these things are capable of. Part of it is, it doesn't help that there's just all these conspiracy theories as to like your TV's watching you,
right,
or whatever kind of thing. But then when now it is true that Google is constantly listening to you, people are maybe desensitized, right? So they're like, okay, whatever you've been telling us this all along, I didn't see any effect. But Google is listening.
It's
so you talk to somebody on the phone. This happened, and the next day on Facebook, some ad pops up about the things you were discussing.
Okay,
the day
so
before.
that really is
It's all that
happening.
connection. Google listens to that. It goes to your profile somewhere, and Facebook or whatever else is fed from it. It's very difficult to wrap your head around this, the capabilities. And I said it to a group of people when I went to kind of a one-day event as to what the next 20 years of IT is going to be like. And we were talking about this issue, and I said, honestly, I don't think any of us, including the government, quite knows for capabilities of an organization like Google, because they have so much data.
Yeah.
And the individual pieces maybe we are aware of, but when you put it all together, what can you do with that is not all clear to people. And I think they're so powerful, and they have so much that I don't know that they know what they can do with it.
They really own us.
And they keep adding innovations. Some of them are, again, very convenient, make life easier in some ways. But privacy is definitely one issue. And especially privacy of individuals, protection from other individuals, but also from governments. As you might remember, there was an issue after the San Bernardino. It was a shooting. Somebody went and killed their Christmas party, of all things.
Oh,
they first attended the party and then went home, got their guns back, and came back and killed people. Anyway, so when they were investigating this, the person had an iPhone, and they wanted to see what led to this and who else they communicated with and all that good stuff. Apple would not unlock it for them.
I do remember this now. Yeah.
Google complies. Apple doesn't.
Interesting.
Right? So, okay, in a situation like this, you might say, of course they should comply. But then again, if my information that I'm trusting with you, when you deem necessary, if you share it, then where does that end? And that's the Google question.
Yeah.
And nobody knows the answer, really. We don't know what happens and we very willingly, we just give up so much.
Do you think it's that
we offer so much?
We don't care, or we don't know, or we're just to overlook it?
I don't think most people quite know.
Okay.
Right. It's also the same thing. They're not as careful with their passwords and other things. All things electronic, especially to a certain group of people. It's I think there's some generational differences. Older people don't think this is real enough, and younger people think that this is just the way of life anyway. So they don't see it as a concern because they don't know any different.
That's actually
like they live their life in the open kind of, so to speak. Meanwhile, employers go and look at people's social media profiles to see if they're even worth looking at. And when you tell it to kids, they don't even get what that even means. And some of it is this thing called people don't, certain generation of people don't even have their online identity. They don't own it because even before they were born, their parents freely volunteer their stuff out there. By the time they're 18, there's so much about them that is already out there. And that's a whole different thing, right?
That's disturbing. Yeah. They put the kids' pictures and...
My older son now is aware, and every time he takes a picture, negotiates with his mom.
Really?
This is not for Facebook. She goes, okay, this is just for blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
He understands that some things he just doesn't want out there.
Holy cow. Did you
He wants to control
instill
it.
that in him? Or?
No, but he has his own social media presence, and he
Okay.
controls that.
Okay.
And he just doesn't want anybody else to have, control whatever it is, the content that is posted about him. Usually pictures. So we all started this Facebook thing because we are all, our parents, the kids' grandparents are all overseas, or the U.S. And so to share, that was the thing. But then you share with them and the friends, and then some people become friends, although they're really not friends. You don't want to say no, what have you. And all of a sudden, they're like, I don't want these people I don't know have my picture, know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I don't share as much about myself either. But that culture, right?
Yeah.
Part of it is convenience. Part of it is literally this concept of 5 minutes of fame. Everybody thinks they're just super important when they put something in there, and everybody likes them or whatever.
It's true.
So there's that. So that's an extension of all of that into these devices. Now they make them even easier.
Do you think that they're making us stupider in any way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, smart technology does. Like people don't know phone numbers anymore. They're not stupider, but we lose some of our memory because, why would you? Everything is given to you whenever you need them. We don't have, for example, people drive without paying as much attention to actual landmarks and road conditions. We just constantly either listen to or look at a navigation device. We cook always following a recipe now. And Google is very convenient with that. But like, if you were to be creative, I don't know how many people can actually put anything together themselves.
True. One of my group members was mentioning, even with the robot vacuum, like, why would I learn how to vacuum myself if that thing's running around with a camera on it?
And to a degree, it is true because specialization did that to us as well. Forget smart machines, but smart people, specialized people, do things, and we don't. And when we don't, over time, we lose the knowledge or the skills, right? So this is not all of a sudden with these devices we got like this. Over time, this happened. My mom used to make things that we ate or we used, and she was a career person too. She wasn't a housemaker per se, but she was a teacher. But I remember her knitting, and she would always make us these cool sweaters and whatever. We didn't think they were cool because they were homemade, but now I'm thinking they were really cool. She did a little bit of tailoring. She used to make things like, she would pickle things in a jar. She would make her own yogurt, whatever, right? My grandmother, on the other hand, even made cheese, which my mom never learned. So we lost some of it over time because it became too convenient, specialization and mass production and economies of scale, whatever. That's a continuation of that trend, right? Now these devices do things and we don't. And when you don't, you lose it. What do you replace it with? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's
I thought recently about the idea like that humans are at the top of the food chain, and I thought there's no way that is even true now. If I got lost in the bush, I would die instantly. I can't kill something or cook it on a fire or make a fire.
That is true. There are some of those things that we are not as good and as in tune with our environment anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The kids, I saw a cartoon or caricature the other day. This angel is talking to this guy, and he said, you actually had a pretty good life, but you were too busy looking at your phone, you missed it all. The kids miss a lot of things. We recently went on a trip. I calculated roughly, we drove 7,000 kilometers.
Wow.
in between late December and early January. So we went through Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, and then we stayed in Missouri for a little while, and then on the mountains, and then Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia.
Wow.
We stayed in Georgia for a night, down Florida. On the way back, we went also to, in addition to the South Carolina, North Carolina, we drove through West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, and back to here, right? 2 weeks. I don't know, my kids loved them. Like every place we went and whatever, it was great. But there were times you had to stop them from looking at those. Look around you.
Look at the landscape.
They do it a little bit, and they're like, okay, I did. Back to the device, right? So we kind of miss out on certain things because what we replaced the extra time that we saved ourselves, because these things take care of stuff for us. What do we fill it with? Nonsense mostly, right? If we were to use it to do creative things, that would be great.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work that way. Yeah. So you know, even the little movement within the house, right? Used to. I remember the days we didn't have a remote control for a TV. So you either put on a channel that everybody was okay with, or you just walk back and forth to just change things if they needed to be changed. And now, forget changing the channel. You go from one thing to another, watching TV to watching things on YouTube or looking at your pictures. I don't even need a remote. For most of it, I can talk to Google Home.
I was gonna say to use
you can use that for the most part. So what happens is then people move less, people do less. I mean, it's a choice. You can still go and do things, and maybe at night I'm tired, I want to not move, but the time I save because of the technological affordances, maybe I'll do something for myself, but I'm not sure that that's happening as much as it should.
Mm-hmm.
The time we save, we waste it on other things is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on that.
I think that's true. And the worst is when you have multiple things going at the same time. It's just crazy.
And people try to do that a lot too, and it doesn't work because
No.
our brains we're not wired like that.
Yeah.
Multitasking is not a human quality, but we think we can do it, especially with the devices. Yeah.
How did you end up with so many Google Homes, knowing everything that
so
you know?
one was a Christmas gift for me from my kids.
Okay.
So I wasn't gonna say no to that, and it is cool. I like the stuff. I don't use it nearly as much as some other people, but it was cool to have it there. The next year for Christmas, my older son, we wanted him to wake himself up. He is a very heavy sleeper. His alarm wasn't loud enough.
Okay.
So even the simplest alarm clock was going to cost you somewhere $30 to $40. Google Home was going for $25, and you can do so much more with it.
Yeah.
So we figured let's get him one. He loved it, and we also gave him Google Chrome. So he's now sitting in his room and talks to the device and watches something on his TV. So again, we made it convenient for him. It wasn't very expensive. I think that's one of the issues, right? It's very accessible. And then one of those Christmases also, my wife gets a bit, especially if she's by herself. And at home, she's a little obsessed about security, who's coming, who's gone. So I figured I didn't know what to buy her, so we got her that ring, which is really cool. It tells you, it comes with a camera, whatever. So one by one, we add these things, and they're all very convenient. So the ring has a service that tells you. So the camera, how does it work? The basic service works as is when there's somebody on your door. I think that's how it works. If they ring the bell, it rings on your phone.
Okay.
But if you also want to monitor people who are just walking by, it's a service. It's not free. It doesn't come with it necessarily. But it was 1 month free, so I said, okay, let's try it. It was good, but I said, yeah, but we don't need this. We have an alarm and whatever. But then I just, out of curiosity, looked at it. It's $30 a year. You know how much cheaper that is and accessible that is, and everything else you can possibly do. So for this, I might as well.
So cheap.
Yeah, you can just observe what's going on around your house. $30 a month is,
Wow.
I mean, a year is nothing.
A year is nothing.
Meanwhile, your house alarm is $45 a month.
Yeah.
Right? No, it's monitored. This isn't, but nevertheless, and I think that's one the accessibility is very high. Again, Google is so cheap.
Yeah.
Same thing. Like you can get these things, and they can do so many things that you feel like it's just you can't not have one. I mean, no, you can have one and then not use it. I guess but the other thing I figure is like I don't do much that is secret that anybody would be interested in. Maybe your political views when you're listening to things or talking, but besides that, even that, like it's nothing radical or anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Google probably isn't that interested in me, I hope.
That's what I always kind of think too, you know, why would they look at me for anything when there's so many other people popping
But those
out
people
crazy
probably don't
keywords.
do anything. That's the thing. Like
Yeah.
they're more aware probably of not to have these devices or
That's
have
true.
them. You would think, but I mean, I don't have any evidence that they would. But recently we were looking at the simple privacy thing, the location services on smartphones. Whether we're looking at a few dimensions, whether people are even aware that they can control this, because default is on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can turn it off. And if you turn it off, certain things won't work for you. That is location sensitive. And certain things aren't going to work the same way for you.
Right.
Right? Like you can still use, for example, you can't use your device for navigation, but you can still use your device for directions. You have to put 2 addresses instead of from where I am.
Okay.
I'm trying to go here, right? But once it gives you that, it's not dynamic. If you change your route, then it won't work, right?
Yeah.
So there's some things that will work, but not the same.
Not as
Some
well.
things won't. But the question is, do people even know that they have this option? We are looking into that. And then if they do, how many of them care that, or do they know what it can do besides what they're using it for? And whether they're willing to give it up or whatever. Like we're trying to calculate this privacy paradox thing
Yeah.
a little bit more.
I did try to turn it off the last time I got a phone, and I just felt like it was so much better having it turned on.
Exactly. So the convenience of it.
Yeah.
At least perceptions of convenience. I know. So, but even that is probably better known than smart home devices. In my experience, I mean, I don't know. Every home is different, but these things are very, like Google and Siri, they're very easily accessible right now. But I don't know how much people are. I think we all are moving. The utility companies are moving to smart meters and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have even issues with that. They don't want their peak times or whatever to be known. I really don't care.
That seems like of all of the things you would worry about.
I think
They're
it's
pretty
just
low.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if some people are just irked by the idea of it, the others, unless you're up for something nefarious, why would you care? Like if they know 4
Yeah.
a.m. I'm just all of a sudden just my power usage peaks. Who cares?
Maybe if
I'm
you had
cleaning
a
them.
grow op in your
or
house
whatever.
or something.
Whatever. Yeah, I mean exactly.
You know?
That's what. If you're up to that, then
Yeah.
maybe then that's an issue. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm not that interesting as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned. But they're going to be commonplace.
Okay.
People don't want to come. I don't want people coming in and looking at that meter. in
No,
my
I
yard.
think that's much worse.
Yeah, but they do it now, right?
You mentioned talking to some people about where it's going in 20 years. Where do you think we're headed with all of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be like cars are going to be all much smarter, and there's a lot of good that comes with it because as a society, mobility is very important, and some people aren't for various reasons, age or health conditions or disability, whatever. And for them to contribute or be part of the society, because driving is not a necessity anymore. That's going to be big. So that's one area that I see this thing going, and it's going to have some fundamental impact, more so than we think, because in this get together with all these researchers and other people in some industry people in this platform in Philadelphia, somebody showed a map of the U.S., not Canada, but I'm assuming it's similar, and in every state they show the most frequent job titles or jobs that people do. Half the states, you wouldn't believe it, is truck driver.
Really?
I couldn't believe. Like, I would think every state has at least a lot of teachers, and teachers were top 3 in most places, but truck driver?
I would not have thought that.
So now, all of a sudden, what are those people going to do?
Yeah.
They're not the most educated and most
No.
skilled people, right? So there's going to be some of those. We all already know, even with Uber, the taxi drivers and that industry is kind of struggling. And now imagine your Uber not needing a person. You call the Uber, the thing just shows up, and it knows where you're going. You just get in it and it drives you. It's kind of like science fiction-y, but it is actually, that technology is almost here.
Really?
Yeah, their self-driving cars are here. It's just that they're not 100% reliable.
It's not quite.
They're not quite reliable,
quite
so it's not. You still have to have somebody in them.
Yeah.
But you can actually, like some of the Teslas and stuff, you can let them drive themselves.
So they're close enough that could really be happening in the next few years.
It is here. Like I said, it's not 100% reliable. My guess is it's not reliable because they're programmed to be more defensive.
Okay.
And if people are driving very aggressively, these things can barely go because they will be constantly defending their position. Right? So, but that's going to be resolved.
Yeah.
There are a lot of public transit that drives itself. Airplanes fly themselves. Pilots are barely there to just make sure that,
That's an interesting
if
point.
there's a crisis that they have to take over, otherwise they let it do it. Used to be only, like from what I'd heard years ago, pilots were important in takeoff and landing. Now they don't even do that.
They don't even do that anymore?
As a matter of fact, there was a Korean airline issue in San Francisco about 7 years ago. We know a guy who was a former pilot. He said, I heard that they were manually trying to land this thing. It's very rare. He goes, I don't know why they did that. And he goes, he thought maybe that's why they screwed up and there was an issue in landing.
Huh.
So he's like, I don't know why they took over. That must be an equipment failure. So these things landed themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't even think about
That's
it. That's
crazy. No. And we just take that for granted. Like, we actually, it's kind of funny because we don't mind that a plane drives itself.
The issue is in the plane, if everything's
cars.
done right, there's no traffic per se. Everything's route is kind of reserved for them.
That's true.
Whereas the highway problem is that the trains drive themselves too.
Yeah.
Just go on and off. That's basically it. There's no other train that you need to navigate around.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You don't do that. If you had to, then it's a major issue. The thing with roads is that it's chaotic, so somebody has to. But like even my car, which is not the most, but it's a relatively new 3-4-year-old high-end-ish car. So you may have experienced this too. So you just there's lane control. So as long as it didn't capture the lanes, it stays in the lane. Mm-hmm. There's intelligent cruise control, which keeps a certain distance. And there's navigation in it. Put all these together, it can drive itself because it knows where to go. Knows where the lanes are, so you can actually, because if you getting out of a lane, it puts you back in. That means it also has the capability to change the lanes when it wants to, right? And then it knows how to not hit other vehicles. So if you put it together, all these pieces, it becomes self-driving, and some do drive themselves. There's years ago there were self-driving cars already.
Really?
It's just that they're not legal. You still have to sit there. Even my car, if you take your hand completely off the steering wheel, it warns you. Put it back on.
Okay.
It's not legal yet, but it will be eventually.
And the self-parking has been around for a while, quite a while too.
Forever. Same idea, when you know where the curb is. Again, that's how planes have been flying, or the ships know where not to hit bottom of the sea, right? It's just the ultrasound, or in this case, I think they use infrared. But you detect remotely where
Right.
objects are. And the other nice thing about it is, it's at night. It's actually safer. If you're controlling it, you need to see what this thing senses it, even if it's all dark.
Okay. Yeah,
Think about
that's much better than
Yeah.
humans.
Some ways, yes, there's going to be not just convenience. It's going to be actually safer. This is what my buddy was saying. Why were they doing it themselves? Because it's less risky
Yeah.
to actually let the thing take care of it, right? So some of these, definitely the smartification, so to speak, of things around us are going to have. It's already having a very positive impact on quality of life. But we have to balance it with all the what are we giving up?
What are we losing?
What are we losing? One, we lose some skills too. Knowledge. We don't know how to do certain things. And skills, I guess, goes hand in hand. And privacy.
Yeah. And then there's
Maybe sometimes even security.
there's the job aspect. That
And
people
there's that.
get
As a
really,
society, truck drivers are going to lose their
Yeah.
jobs. But who else?
people are really upset about the self-scanners these days. I think it's almost like we need to have a complete rethink of how we run
That
society.
scares me actually more than anything else. Because, and this is there was a guy running for president in the U.S., Andrew Yang.
Mm-hmm.
His whole platform was this, and his solution was what I used to think, which is universal basic income. Because certain people simply are not going to be able. There's not going to be no economic need for a certain group of people.
Right.
It's almost inevitable. So, what do? You let them starve. They're going to get aggressive, and they're going to try to survive. So you have to keep them, at least their basic needs served,
Yeah.
and that's a form of taxation for the function of the society.
Yeah. And that
If
would
you don't do
allow
that,
them-
there's going to be unrest. I mean, like the whole populism thing, one reason it's happening is because certain jobs are gone and people are blaming other people for it, but in all reality, it's not other people necessarily.
Right.
It's just that things are done differently and you don't need as many people. And actually, in Canada, we run these social programs. Let me give you an example. One is Go Train. They're literally people who just go on there and make announcements or go up there and check your Presto card once in a while. You don't need any of that. You can automate all of that. I think that's run because you don't want to get rid of these people.
Wow.
Banks, people I know in banks tell me somewhere between 10 to 25% of their employees they can get rid of within a year if they really went that route. But then the government, they would have a problem. They
Yeah.
would be penalized because they're running a semi-social program. So much so that I know people in a bank, there are some people they don't even show up. Nobody even knows what they do, but they keep these people.
Wow.
Because the alternative is
People go nuts.
social unrest. You can't have an unemployment rate of 30-40%.
Yeah.
It would be really, I mean, I don't know where it breaks. Every society is slightly different, but if everybody did everything they could possibly do with automation and technology and artificial intelligence and machines, that's not a good situation right now. Our society is not structured like that.
Right.
And on top, think about it, on top, people are living longer.
Yeah.
Partly because of all the technology, and medical technology and all that stuff.
And so they can't afford to retire either.
Yeah, because the retirement was supposed to be 10, 15, 20 years. Whatever.
Yeah.
But if people are going to live to their 100s, you can't retire at 65. That's still
Exactly.
1/3 of your life ahead of you.
Yeah.
Right?
So you don't think that the universal basic income is the solution?
No, I don't not think it, but
Okay.
it's very hard to convince people of that.
Yeah.
Although eventually, I mean, there's going to be so many things that eventually, it's practically, that's what we will be doing.
Right.
Even now, I mean.
Even if we don't
there's-
actually call it that.
Exactly.
Interesting.
But besides that, you need to. There's so many things that I mean, there are very radical things that needs to be done if we want to control this whole thing about people's well-being and welfare. One is population control, the other is all the environmental stuff, and so far I don't know whether there is any correlation between this advancements in these fields and the improvement of our environment. I don't see it. If anything, because it's still controlled by the same people who are very profit oriented.
Right.
Maybe it's even going to make it worse. So that's very scary. But it can be put in good use, of course.
Yeah.
When we have smart devices everywhere, we can measure so many things now. And we can make smart decisions based on that. So for smart or green energy, right? One thing that people keep saying is, oh, well, we can't store this. So solar, and the sun shines, you generate electricity, then what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know what they do with the, I think they control the water turbines and other things.
Yeah.
And in the US, definitely, so coal or fuel base, you generate it when you need it, whereas sun just shines whenever it does, right?
Yeah.
But one of our friends who works for a lighting company said one very simple thing that has been put out as a solution is that you can use that energy basically to pump water to a high place, so to speak.
Right. Like a reservoir.
And then whenever you need it from that reservoir, you can run the water and it becomes hydro for you. So that's how you store the energy.
Okay.
To move water.
Right.
And then water moves right back to generate it again when you need it. So because basically you're adding to the potential energy of the water by putting it in a higher spot. And he goes, this is very basic, but there are other analogies to this. That's really actually, that's the way to think about this, instead of storing it with all these batteries and whatever, which still would be a problem.
Yeah.
So these are going to come, and again, our ability to sense things and collect data on the spot, and the connectivity of these Internet of Things or smart little devices and sensors, and all the machine learning and whatever, some of these things can be improved. It's just a matter of who owns the technology and what their motivation and interests are.
Right.
All the previous industrial revolutions helped the ruling class or wealthy class, capitalists who owns capital own the devices and new technology as well. And there is no reason to think this is going to be any different.
Yeah.
But if it was, then we can all benefit, right? But my guess is some of us will benefit immensely at the expense of others.
Right.
And that scares me. It is what it is. The universal income is one solution to that. But this whole environmental thing, I mean, that's not hand in hand, but if the technology is not used for that, then and we think that, devices don't need clean air and water or whatever, so we ignore these areas where people live because, they don't contribute to the economy.
Right.
That's just that's just a disastrous scenario, right? I'm not saying we're there yet, but there are examples of it. I mean, there are parts of Africa that are unlivable because the oil industry basically left a toxic wasteland behind them when they pulled out. And these people that don't have the means to do it themselves, right?
Yeah.
I'm afraid of the same thing because technology is just going to make certain things redundant and people are not going to care. The people who have power won't care about the people who don't. So
that's a dark.
That's the most extreme thing that can happen. But what is here and now is the couple of things about personal privacy and security and lifestyle changes that are not always positive. I guess that's my take at least.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for having that conversation with Oscar. I feel like it was a really great open dialogue about not only what sort of AI we have access to and are so easily accessible, but how we treat the AI and how we really use it in our everyday lives. One thing that I thought that was brought up that nobody really talks about when it comes to AI or privacy is kind of how easily accessible it is. Oscar mentioned how he has 3 Google devices, and it was purely out of just receiving it as gifts, or his son needed an alarm clock and it was actually cheaper to get a Google Home. A lot of times these devices are just put into the market at a very accessible, easy to buy price, which makes it more valuable to us. We're getting a device that does so much for such a cheap price. So it's easier for us to actually acquire the equipment that allows Google and Facebook to receive our privacy. So they don't see it as much as of a liability for them by selling it at a cheap price. It's not the actual product they want the value from. They are looking to get the value from our privacy and our data and collecting that data and selling that data instead of actually selling the product. There are many touch points from the interview that we could talk about. I know, Serena, you wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the liability of self-driving cars.
Something interesting that was brought up is in the self-driving cars and who becomes liable if there's something that goes wrong. The cars seem to have the intelligence to self-park, navigate, and do all sorts of things, but it is curious to what happens with that technology. Similar to how Sim brought up the cameras in the home vacuums because it makes the floor print to move easier, which seems like such a logical and functional feature that only makes the actual technology able to work. But because of this, there's images of your home that are still available for others to see. So it'll be interesting as to how this information is monitored and used in addition to who has access to it. There doesn't seem to be too many regulations so far in the digital realm because there's also that matter of jurisdiction and so many other things because laws are different in so many other countries, different provinces even, cities. So they just have to figure out so much technical on that aspect that we don't really know what's going to happen, but it'll only tell with time and as a society how we move forward on that front, as well as if we know all this and there's so much up in the air and there's so many different moving parts, will our patterns change or will our behavior stay the same?
So there are a lot of forms of AI that I use daily in my own home, and those are like robotic vacuums that have a camera. And one of the biggest issues that I have is that there is in fact a camera that's implemented into the vacuum so that it can learn the map of your house and know where to turn and where to go and create its own map. The problem is that as with all cameras and smart devices, they're susceptible to hackers. And my issue is, what if a hacker can hack into the camera in my vacuum? What this means for me is that the hacker can gain access to the vacuum remotely and not only move the device, which is creepy enough, but they can also have access to the camera to watch me in my home and what I'm doing in my own private life. Somebody that I'm not comfortable with is now able to hack into that. And if they're able to hack into the camera, they're able to hack into moving the device, and somebody in my family says, "Oh, did you turn on the vacuum?" And I go, "No." It's like, "Oh, it might be a glitch. It's just something that, the vacuum just started on its own. Maybe it thinks it's time to clean, but in fact, it's a much greater issue than that." And then, that's not as likely in our everyday lives. But I mean, for those that have the money to afford such technology, those that are more powerful, more celebrities or more relevant, it could really be detrimental to them if they are, being hacked into. Also hacking into into the vacuum, it could access other private information such as our Wi-Fi network. And so basically they could suck up any of our private data instead of just dust and dirt. I think all of this is very important to tie in with the author Yuval Noah Harari. In his recent book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, he talks about the technological revolution is developing faster than ever, with more specific goals in place. And like the Industrial Revolution, the rise of AI will bring immense changes in the economic value and political power of human life. So to cope, we as humans must be aware of the consequences, and we must have a clear plan in order to build the safest and most beneficial AI, and this is a process that cannot be rushed. It begins with confronting one step at a time. And it is our role as individuals to educate ourselves with the facts by being informed of the possible outcomes and not just looking at the surface level of what is shown to us by the media. And at our course, humans have fought to reduce inequality and achieve equality, like Arya mentioned with Zuboff, and history has taught us to believe that globalization and technology will get us there sooner. However, this is a part of our history that we have not yet experienced, and globalization has so far benefited large segments of humanity, but there are indications of inequality increasing among societies, and as a consequence, our species could separate into different biological classes, which Harari is known as the useless class of humans. And the leading cause of this inequality is due to AI and the changes that AI has been developing. Focusing public and private resources and attention on advancing machine learning is more important than all other global issues, including climate change, and this is one of the many phrases I hear circulating amongst people today. Most, however, are not fully familiar with the concept of what machine learning truly is. Machine learning is only a subfield of AI, and as artificial intelligence evolves, it magnifies the ability to use personal information in a way that can intrude on privacy and raise personal information to new levels of power and speed. There are many privacy issues that are going to emerge with AI.
So I really think this conversation encapsulated not only how AI is used in our homes, but brought up the conversation of privacy and privacy issues. We use AI every day, whether we know it or not, in our cell phones, in our cars, in our home vacuuming. And the easier it is for us to use, the more likely we are to actually use it. So with that being said, I think this was a great start to kind of not only be conscious of our AI usage, but really to understand what we're doing when we're using AI. So thank you so much for joining us this week, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.